Welcome to our virtual art talk. I'm John Carissa, Chairman of Venice Family Clinic's Board of Directors and member of the Venice Art Walk Curatorial Committee. I'm delighted to introduce Tessa Blumenberg of Gagosian and Jonathan T.D. Neal of Claremont Graduate University, who will share their top picks from this year's auction and who will encourage you to collect art from the heart. We're pleased that you've joined us to learn more about some of the incredible works in this year's silent auction. The auction supports the clinic's mission of providing vitally needed healthcare to our most vulnerable neighbors. This work includes the clinic's response to the COVID-19 crisis. I think we can all agree that the pandemic has shown us just how interconnected we all are. I've witnessed the additional perils that our patients, our doctors, and our nurses face during this trying time, and we cannot thank our many caregivers enough for all that they do. Now, whether you collect from the head, the heart, or both, know that your purchases will help those in most dire need. Now, I've been a lucky winner of an Andrea Bowers drawing and a Dash Manley painting at past Venice Art Walk auctions. Both greet me each morning as I work from home during the quarantine. So be like me. Buy beautiful new artwork to hang on the walls that you've been staring at blankly for the past few months and support a very worthy cause. I've had a sneak peek of Tessa and Jonathan's selections, and unfortunately, they included some works that I had selfishly hoped would have gone unnoticed or underappreciated, but we are here asked to be our most generous selves, and with that hope and with that admonition, I will turn over the program to Tessa and Jonathan. Thanks.
Thanks. And thank you to everybody who's joining us this afternoon. Jonathan and I are huge fans of the clinic and what they do, so it's an honor to be here to share with you our thoughts on what we think collecting from the heart means, and as well as some of our favorites from the auction. I just want to point out before we get started that there is a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. If you have any questions for Jonathan and I, we'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation so long as we have some time. And then if you have any questions about the auction or the clinic itself, someone from the clinic will answer those questions in real time. So collecting from the heart. Heart is a word that I chose, which I'm not really sure it's the right one. So I'm going to try to explain to you what I mean by that.
How could it be wrong?
It's wrong. Let me try. So when I walk into an exhibition at a gallery or museum, I kind of take a scan of the room and I can quite quickly identify one or two works that that I think I want to look at a little bit more closely. And as I walk through the installation, sure enough, it's those one or two works that I want to spend more time with. They spoke to me in some capacity, and that's what I mean by heart. And even if they're fantastic paintings, I might even have like a physical reaction to them or a visceral one. And those are the works that I would argue you should think about taking home with you if you can. And I also want to mention that collecting is a deeply personal experience. What I like is going to be different than what my best friend likes. And Jonathan and I have completely different picks for this afternoon. And that's okay. If you see a work in the auction that has no bids on it, and there's one that has 20 that you don't understand, that's fine. It's what matters is that you love it and you're going to take it home and you're going to be the person that lives with it. So with that said, when I was given the online catalog for this auction, I approached it the same way I would an installation. I flipped through the images and I picked the ones that popped out at me. And I just want to mention that there are over 150 works in this auction, and it was really challenging for Jonathan and I to pick 5. Like almost impossible. I changed my list 100 times. So by no means does this represent the only artworks that we loved. It's just a couple. So with that, I mean, Jonathan, do you want to talk about what you think collecting from the heart means?
Sure. Everything that you said, I agree with 100%. I think that the work that you choose from this auction in particular, you really can't go wrong with anything that's here. The clinic has such a long history in Venice and with the art walk and with the history of art in California and more broadly. So there's so many fantastic artists. It's almost an impossible thing to go through and and whittle it down to the ones that that both Tessa and I have chosen here to share with you. Um, I am very interested in context and discourse and ideas, and that's the thing that really provides that visceral response for me that Tessa was mentioning. And so when I was looking through this, I was taking very seriously that we are in the midst of a global health crisis and a pandemic, and so I was letting the works speak to me through that lens, and making them part of that story, even if that wasn't the intention of the artist or that wasn't the context that gave rise to their creation. And I think that that's really important because storytelling and the stories that come with how you collect work, how you share that work, are really important to how these things exist in your life and how you share them with others. And they're important to the artist too. And of course, there's the story about how these works live within the history of art, within the context of an artist's career, and in dialogue with other artists and other artworks. But importantly, context never stops. And there's always the capacity for these works to take part in a new story, and one that belongs uniquely to you or uniquely to me. And so that is the way that I went about doing my picks for this particular task, as impossible as it was, given how much great stuff there was to look at. But I really thought about it in terms of what were the works that were really speaking to me right now, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in.
Mhm. So if we could go to the next slide to start with our auction picks. So we'll start with mine. We'll start with my five. This is a painting by an artist named Jeremy Shockley. He is a tremendous painter, and also an incredible human being, which makes me admire his paintings even more. He's from South Carolina originally. He was an apprentice to Tom Sachs for many years before working for Gagosian, which is how I know him. But he has since committed to his practice full time, and he has an LA studio here. And all his paintings have this kind of dreamy like quality. I would put him in the surrealist camp. Here, for example, the geese on the stage with this curtain of lily pads is probably something you're not going to see in real life. But what I also think is really ambitious about Jeremy's work is that they're all well, the ones that I've seen, they're usually really small. And for a painter, that's really challenging to do. You can get away with a lot of things on a bigger scale. And as somebody who's interested in acquiring work, this is what we call domestic scale. It's small. You can put it on almost any wall in your home. And I can't talk about Jeremy's work enough. I just think he's such an incredible painter, and I would encourage you to sort of follow his career and see what he's up to. So we can go to my next pick, please. This is a drawing by Carissa Potter. She works out of Oakland, California, and I was drawn to sort of the simplicity of this work, the lines, the colors, and of course it has this reference to Manet's Olympia, which is a painting that I love. And I don't know about you, Jonathan, but like when I like an artwork, I kind of immediately envision it in my home. So I saw this in my kitchen, you know. It's probably the banana and the teacups or whatever they are. But I just thought I would love to see this every day when I wake up. It's just really pleasing and soothing to look at. And most of her drawings have these sort of private moments in minimal interiors, which I just kind of relate to myself. And in addition to being having an active exhibition schedule, Carissa has also published 2 books that have her stories and also her drawings. And reading her stories really quickly, I realized that she's a romantic, and I also just love that about her too. So Carissa's work is just a cool one.
It's a great pick. Also, I love how there's this casualness to it, but there's nothing casual about the art historical reference in the background of Manet's Olympia, which is anything but a casual painting. And so there's this wonderful dialogue about the sort of intentionality of this long history to which Carissa is laying claim in some sense.
Right. So we can move on to my next one, which is a photograph by Gino Prinsenna. Funny, I'm just realizing that all of my auction picks are 5 different medium. That was not intentional, but there we go. So Gino is a fine art photographer. He's of South Korean descent. He was raised in Germany, and he was a handler for the stars, for some of the biggest celebrities in LA. And on location, he brought his camera and took these beautiful landscape photographs. And Jonathan's going to talk about this a little bit more in his selection, but this was a purely nostalgic pick for me. I live in LA, I live in Venice. The marine layer is a thing here. And I just thought the marine layer here was just beautiful and daunting at the same time. I'm also an active hiker. So this is a scene I see almost every weekend. And unfortunately, I can't see it right now. But I thought if I ever left LA, I would love to bring this piece with me. Just to remember all of those mornings, all of those hikes. This is in the Pacific Palisades, which is right on the water. So you can hear the water and the breeze and the smell of the sage. And I just thought I would love to bring this with me. So that's Gino's work. We can move on to the next one, which is a sculpture by an artist named Kelly Lamb. She is an artist and designer, also based out of LA. And last year, she donated a giant sculpture of an eyeball with this gold patina. And when I did the research for this sculpture, I realized that she was the same artist who made the eyeball from last year. So clearly, I have a thing for her work. Here too, there's this like surrealist play. I mean, 2 fists can never be joined like this. In real life. And I think maybe I have a thing for surrealist work, possibly, I'm not sure. But then you have this grip, and it's obviously a female wrist because of its size. So this grip of sort of strength and power, maybe even anger, juxtaposed against this beautiful like gold and silver patina. I just, again, this was another work that I envisioned in my home almost instantaneously. Like I saw it on my coffee table or in a library shelf. And an amazing sort of talking point for people who would come over and look at this object and want to know more about it. And I happen to love to do that when people come to my home, kind of share with them some of the artworks on my walls and explain to them what they are and stories behind them. There's usually a story behind something that I have here. So yeah, that's Kelly's work, which I thought was pretty cool. So my next one, last but not least, is Enrique Martinez Laya. This is a biased pick for me, as Jonathan knows. I was Enrique's studio director for many, many years. But I honestly have to say, I would have picked this artwork regardless. I think it's stunning. So I just want to offer a bit of its history so you can understand the context. So in 2007, Enrique did a show at the Miami Art Museum, which is now the Perez Art Museum. And he installed these 4 colossal paintings of this girl with a leopard around her neck with the backdrop of the 4 seasons of the year. So winter, spring, summer, and fall. I think we actually have a slide of it, if we could go to the next slide for a moment. So these are 2 out of the 4 paintings. And I just think it's such an iconic body of work for Enrique. So much so that the Cowboy Junkies, which is a Canadian rock band, they used the images of the paintings on 4 albums that they released at the same time. So if we can go back to the lithograph again, forward one. So this print is a detail, obviously, of those paintings, and therefore kind of a buy-in to the history of the work. Yeah, I mean, also those paintings are long gone. I mean, they're in collections all over the world. But more so, chances are you don't have the wall space for those colossal things. So here, this is a very sort of attainable print. It's a wonderful scale. It's just totally beautiful. And yeah, so I would recommend.
And it's a core piece of iconography from Enrique's painting practice, right? The leopard played this big role in a number of big paintings we've seen his show. at the Miami Art Museum with those epic scaled works with the sort of snow landscape. And so this is one of
That's the same show, yeah, the
yeah,
Nomad.
yeah. This is one of those pieces where it's like you are getting something that is not just some derivative work. I mean, this is a central
Yeah.
piece of something that Enrique has worked on for a long time.
Yeah. So do you want to go through your?
Yeah, please. I'm so now like I'm so jealous. I feel like I gotta go back and rethink what I picked. Good work, Tessa. So I came upon this work by Corinne Shea, who's a French-born Venice, California-based artist. I love this work because I'm a huge science fiction fan. And Shea's work has these wonderful elliptical, illustrative storylines behind them. And this one's title, Fluctuat net megritur, tossed but not sunk. I found out when I did a little digging is actually the motto of the city of Paris. And so it has a sort of a longer history to it. At any rate, I love the fact that this is very much a sort of pandemic specific painting, but it really launches us off onto the works that I picked. This is the only one that's explicit about having a relationship to the situation that we find ourselves in currently. But I really liked this kind of flying saucer, almost steampunk type of vessel that's in the middle of this rocking ocean with this somewhat with the seagulls or maybe bats flying above with this kind of strange landscape. This is the kind of thing that I would happily put on a wall as a kind of remembrance of both the sort of resilience that we have in these times, as well as the otherworldliness of it, something that we just couldn't expect in the. So that was a great find because I was not familiar with Shea's work beforehand.
This was the work that we overlapped on.
Yeah.
We wanted it.
So I'll take the next slide. Yes, Zoe Crozier. Anybody who is interested in an artist who has an eye for Los Angeles, you must look at Zoe's work. She's more New York based now, but spends a decent amount of time in LA. And this was a series of works called Out the Window, which really looked at the landscape of hotels are in and around LAX, around Los Angeles International Airport. And at the time when they were made, it was much more about the transiency, these kind of strange interiors and worlds that people inhabit as they come and go in the kind of no place of international travel and globalization. Speaks to a little bit of this sort of alienation that had always been in the background of LA mythology. But now updated for the age of the coronavirus, these airplanes flying in the background have a whole different context to them and a whole different valence of what it is that we're looking at. And these scenes now through the window are now not, to me, ones of transient, but ones of a kind of almost a feeling of permanent condition. And then I like this one in particular because it's got this Chinese restaurant billboard in the background, speaking to the origins of the coronavirus, presumably. And so there's a great thing going on here that allows you to read it through the lens of our current situation. But this is a work and an artist who I think is just fantastic and who anybody who's interested should spend more time with. Okay, the next slide. Thurston Hopkins. So Hopkins was a hustler. Was started as an artist. Wasn't making money as a painter. Picked up a camera because that seemed to be the thing to do in the 1930s, and began commercial photography as well as began as a real pioneer of street photography. And after World War II, worked for what was the equivalent of Life magazine here in the United States, which was called Picture Post in the United Kingdom. And it folded in the late 50s, after which Hopkins started his own ad agency and worked in the advertising business, and then eventually went back to painting paintings. But this is a work from right around the time when Picture Post folded, and is a great example of his decisive moment type of street photography. And of course, I think anybody now looking at this will recognize that this is a gesture which is not going to come back all that soon, right? I mean, this is a 1956 street photograph of a kiss, right? Of a greeting that may never come back. We don't know. I mean, it's a very strange thing to see. So I loved this because it immediately jumped out at me as both a wonderful artifact of photographic history, as well as something pretty poignant for today. Okay, next one. Yes, Toba Kadori, another fantastic artist, LA-based since the 1990s, born in Australia, moved here, I believe, when she was 20 or in her early 20s. Long shown with David Zwirner Gallery. I had a wonderful exhibition at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art a couple of years ago. Normally works in these very large scale paintings on paper, a kind of heavily waxed, worked over paper, which you kind of get in this etching, where the material on which they're almost drawing like, they're very draftsman like pictures that Kadori makes. At any rate, this one, I've always been a fan of Kadori's work. This is a chain link fence. Architectural elements are pretty common to her work. And I couldn't help thinking about the way that the fence itself has become a metaphor for so much in our current political moment, and our current social moment. Everything feeling right now in quarantine about being locked down or caged, but then of course thinking about the detention centers at the southern border and other ways that fencing has been thought about as this thing that divides us. At any rate, I don't think you could get a better sort of elliptical, abstract, but also incredibly referential condensation of meanings all in one work that's made even more relevant, given our contemporary context. So this is a piece that I think would be a fantastic one to have, even though it's very subtle. I mean, her work is super subtle, but I don't think that anyone should be scared away from something like that. It's a great thing to have. Very contemplative. Which takes us to the next one. Danny First. Danny First is a wonderful artist, but also a great contributor to LA's arts and cultural infrastructure. Runs a small exhibition space at his house in Hancock Park called The Cabin, which is a tiny exhibition space with dimensions based on the shack that Ted Kaczynski was living in for many times off the grid. It's a wonderful small exhibition space. Also runs a residency program for up and coming artists. So Danny's work itself is really worth paying attention to. And for about 5 years or longer, I think, he's had a whole series of these benches that he's produced. They're all made from 100% recycled work, recycled plastics. And some of them are really funny, right? I mean, Danny's got a great sense of humor, from what I can tell. Some of these benches have things like yada, yada, yada written on them. Another one that is a great sort of send up of the art world has reserved for a more important collector than you. So they've got these wonderful kind of send ups. But this one, I thought was very poignant, and especially at a moment where we're all feeling pretty challenged with the lockdowns in various different states of distress and anxiety, and worried about being stuck at home, not being able to get to work, not being able to engage with the people and the places that we have come to know and love for so long. I thought, what better thing to have as a constant reminder that you could have this thing, you could put it on a porch, you could have it in your living room, you could stick it at the foot of your bedroom, and have this constant reminder that that where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be, and to use that as kind of a little koan every day to keep you going during these otherwise challenging times.
Yeah, good advice.
So those are my picks.
Okay.
And now I feel like I need to go back in and place bids on all of them, because after having spoken about them, now I want them even more.
So I think if we can advance to the next slide that gives some people some information. Yeah, I mean, thank you again for joining us this afternoon. The auction goes until May 19. There's a link here to Artsy where you can bid, and please bid generously, especially during this period of COVID-19. The auction, the clinic needs us and our help more than ever. So Jonathan, I don't know if you want to see if there's any questions that came in while we were chatting.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Q&As right now. We've got a couple that are coming in. Maybe I'll throw one of these to you, Tessa. What was the first work of art that you collected, or that the first work of art that you considered the first to really enter your or begin your collecting process?
Good question. So the first artwork was a gift from my father. It is an apple on a stack of books with this curtain behind. It's really beautifully painted. I wish I knew the name of the artist. Of course, it's escaping me now. But I think that really started my interest in art, believe it or not, because I was kind of younger when he gave me that painting, and it kind of set the tone for art that I would appreciate later on in life.
That's great. Yeah, I think many people don't realize that the process of collecting is not just about the going out and the acquiring and this sort of abstract thing. Again, all of these works have stories attached to it, right? I mean, I think that these these kinds of auctions, especially benefit auctions that are stocked with such fantastic artists who have been involved with the clinic for such a long time, these are great things to also provide as gifts to maybe a new graduate, right? I mean, you've got a ton of students who are finishing up their college degrees, finishing up their master's and PhD degrees this week, next week, and some of these works will stand as great markers of these rites of passage that will hold meaning, again, even above and beyond what it is that the artist put into these works, and it makes them all the more special and all the more important, and it makes sure that they stay with us, they continue, they are kept, they're cared for, they're conserved, and that is one of the most important ways why that these things come down to future generations. It's a really important way of thinking about how to begin collecting, even beyond who the artists are, or whether you think that they've got some sort of purchase in the larger art history. It goes, Tessa, to what you said at the beginning. It's really about finding a place in your heart for these works, and you know, that space is infinite.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll look at maybe one more question we've got here. This is a good one. I like this one. If you could own any artwork in the world, even if you couldn't afford it, which one would it be? Put it this way: what work of art would you steal if you could?
Oh, steal. I would steal almost anything by Edvard Munch.
Oh, really?
Anything. I mean, it could have been his paintbrush, a scribble that he did on a cigarette box. I don't care. I would want anything that are incredible. So that would be my choice. What about you?
It's a good question. It's kind of, it's not the most beautiful or the most compelling work, but it was one that's just stuck with me, again because of context. Marcel Duchamp's 3 standard stoppages, which is this, I would say for most people, a totally boring work of art. A lot of what Marcel Duchamp did would be considered as boring, but hugely generative and interesting for a lot of other artists and for history. He had a set of instructions about holding a 1 meter length of string and letting it drop to the floor from the height of 1 meter, and then tracing the design or the line that it marked out on the ground. And he did this 3 times, and he fixed the string to these strips of leather and then encased them, and put them in their own box. And so there's just something about that work that's always stuck with me. And every time someone asks me about it and I tell them, they think that I'm totally insane or a psycho. And but that's the way it works.
Listen, that's what we've been talking about this whole 30 minutes. I mean, it is whatever it is speaks to you. So by all means.
Good. Well, I mean, I would say that we should give everyone time to get onto the auction itself and to go back in and reconsider the works that speak to them, and the ones that are going to mark this time as well. I mean, I think that it's a important activity, and I really I think that the thing that makes this even more special for me is the Venice Family Clinic itself, and the work that they do and have done on the west side of LA. Again, I'm new to LA, but very quickly this was an organization that stood out, and the people that work here, John and Tiffany and Aaron, I mean, the people involved with the clinic are extraordinary. And so anything that can be done to support them is very high in my book.
It's true. And I said this before. I mean, anytime I talk about the volunteer work that I do for the clinic, I mean, everybody I talk to has a sort of a memory of the time that they went to the clinic because they needed something. And almost everybody I chatted to has that reaction. So it's really been an incredible resource for this community. And so I'm just so happy that we can support it in this way. So yeah.
So am I. Go bid. Go bid.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your evening. Thank you, John, for coming, and everybody at the clinic.
Tessa, great to see you. Great to speak with you.
Always. Talk to you soon.